So somebody put up a picture on Reddit, and they basically put up the Steam numbers for Guilty Gear Xrd R2, and then they put up the Steam numbers for Persona 4 Arena Ultimax. And they were basically making a point of saying that, hey, just because your game gets rollback doesn't mean that your game is going to be saved. And the numbers for Guilty Gear Xrd R2 was basically that, the 24-hour peak for this game recently was only 600 people, and then for Persona 4 Arena Ultimax, it was only 119 people. So basically, him saying that, hey, these games got rollback, but that doesn't mean your game is going to get revived. And it made me start thinking of just like, it seems like first impressions of your fighting game is the most important. Um, for example, we got Samurai Showdown that's about that announced that they're gonna have rollback and stuff like that. But do you know how long it's been that people have played that Samurai Showdown has been available, and people just been like, this game is unplayable. Like, I'm not gonna sit and play it by myself. If I go online, it's trash. I think Grand Blue might be the only game that breaks that. It seemed like Grand Blue has that fan base to where it's just like, oh my gosh, we finally got rollback. It's on and popping. But it seems like for a lot of other games that your first impression is everything. If you don't come out the gate with everything that you need to make your game successful, I don't think people are going to be too forgiving to come back and play the game. So what do you guys think? Do you think like if you have a game out for a while, and then you decide like a year or two later that, okay, now we'll give it rollback, do you think that necessarily means that your game is going to be revived? So what do y'all think?
So I'm gonna start off with first with Grand Blue Fantasy versus Rising's case. It has a few things going for it. One, the game is actually pretty good. It's a fun game. Two, it didn't get a fair shake with the pandemic, and people actually kind of want to see that game succeed. And three, with it getting rolled back, it's this whole new version. It's like it's a basically a whole new release. It ain't just like they're releasing that game just with rollback, and they're adding features, a graphic update, all that. So that's like more incentive for someone like for a customer or consumer to actually go and get it. Oh, that's you're adding stuff. It's like a whole new thing going on.
It's basically a whole new
Um,
game.
yeah.
Yeah.
Sure there's gonna be more characters. With games such as Persona 4 Ultimax and XR 2, those games been out. Those games released on PS3. So we two generations from that, and the what's the word I'm looking for? Just the way fighting games are, people fall off anyway, like the player base. So we got two generations of players falling off. So really, the only people that are going to be left playing games like that are like hardcore audiences. So that's good for people that actually really love those games and the hardcore players. So they will come back and play for rollback. But something like rollback itself won't just make like a whole new slew of people come in and say, "Hey, I want to play this game." It could, but more than likely it won't. It'll just make a resurgence for people that love the game and were hardcore with it when it came out. So yeah, it's kind of hard for just roll back to just the internet to make it better. Whereas like it's just gonna bring in a whole new audience. So I think it's just gonna bring the hardcore people back. They can actually play it now and enjoy it. So that's actually good for them. But in terms of being like, hey, this is gonna bring in new people, nah, that's not gonna work. At least I don't think it's gonna work that way.
Yeah. I kind of agree with Mr. Game and Lift. I think like the whole like those games are old, man. Like they've had their chance, you know.
Yeah.
It's like for Grand Blue came out what, like 2019, 2020, something like that.
Yeah.
Um and I mean it has I mean and it's almost like the game was like frozen in time for a little while because it didn't really get a chance to grow. It just kind of was like sitting there. And the first impression for that game was good. Like it was real good. Like people really enjoyed that game. I enjoyed that game, you know. And I think like in terms of what is more important, I mean like they're both. I would say they're both equally important, right? You know, like the adding of new features is just as important as having a good first impression. I mean, like, let's be honest, Persona 4 Ultimax had a pretty good first impression. You know, I mean, that's the second the second game, right? Because they made like Persona 4 Mayonaka Arena, and then they came back and they're like, okay, now we're doing Ultimax, and then they added more characters and stuff. So technically speaking, they already did like their Grand Blue Rising like back on the 360 and the PlayStation 3. So for them to get like Rollback now, it's kind of like, okay, cool, but you know, this game is kind of past its lifespan, you know, like Mr. Game Over was saying, the only people who are going to come back and play that are like hardcore players. It's like, oh well, you know, this isn't going to revive your game. It's like, yeah, I mean, this reviving, I think like it all depends on like if we're going to talk about reviving dead games, we would have to probably talk about the way that the game died, right? Because if we're talking about like Persona, I think like a game like Persona 4, like Ultimax, kind of died a natural death, right? Over time,
Nice
you
way
know,
to put that.
you know, like it was a game that came out, people bought it, it made a good first impression, it was fun, and then you know it tapered off, you know, like as you know, as time went on. But as for Grand Blues was, I would consider an unnatural death, because this Grand Blues like problems weren't necessarily, I mean, Grand Blue wasn't doing anything that the games that were prevalent around that time weren't really doing. Like Street Fighter 5 didn't really have rollback, like Tekken 7, even though Harada said it, you know, didn't really have rollback like that. Like it was doing the same as most of the other games. It's just, you know, their implementation might have been a little bit off in regards to like delay-based netcode. So then instead of like people focusing on how good the game was, like when we're all forced to not meet up in places and everything like that, then we're focused on, wow, the internet, like the netcode for this is bad. I'm not having a good time. This stinks. So it dropped off. The player base kind of like got cut in half and then got cut in half again. And now it's getting a second chance. Like you're saying, like this is basically a new game. It's a new game, basically, like with new features and everything. It's getting a second shot. But you know, it's like I said, like this is just as important as the first time we played Grand Blue. Because if we had played Grand Blue the first time and it was like, wow, this is trash, then nobody would care about Grand Blue Rising. It'd just be like, okay, well, this is just a re-release of a game that like is garbage. Like nobody cares. But like even like a game like DNF Duel. DNF Duel is kind of like a game that's making a small comeback, mostly because like the problem with DNF Duel is that in my estimation, just in my opinion, the first impression that I got from the beta wasn't good, because they fouled it up. They messed it up. They were like, okay, we're gonna have like a beta that you can play online, but then the network system isn't working, so you can't do that. And then you can play the arcade mode, but we're going to put you against a random opponent. Okay, that's fine. But you're also going to have to play with a random character. Why? Every match I got to play with a random character? That got tired quick. That got old really fast. So when the game came out, I was like, I don't care. I mean, like the beta, I had a really bad time with the beta, you know? And DNF Duel, I think, like has to fight against that kind of stuff a little bit more. Because I remember when Grand Blue came out, I didn't even wait for it to come out here in the States. Like I bought a Korean version, you know. That's how big the game was looking to be, and it was going to be awesome. And then COVID. So I feel like in this case, we're kind of like getting like the Grand Blues. I can't even say that 100% that this is Grand Blue's second chance. This is more like Grand Blue's like do-over. This is their first chance, like the first chance they should have gotten 3-4 years ago when the game came out the first time. Like this is their chance to like really get the chance that they deserved back then when right before COVID. Like it never, like there are several other games that definitely deserve that chance, but I'm glad that Grand Blue is getting that. And maybe there are a couple of other games out there that might be in line to like get their first chance now, instead of like that sorry excuse for a first chance that they might have gotten, tried to get right, like Soul Calibur 6, maybe, with their world tour, maybe we can get a first chance. I mean, let's be honest, like that was a chance that was going to be big time, and we're going to get the world tour, and it didn't happen, and they just never brought it up again. So